GM, GN, GA, all the G's to all the G's. This is We the Film3 Thursdays. Today we're doing the title when this was the original space was made was So You Want to Be an Indie Filmmaker. And it's a workshop idea we had about trying to get people from their initial idea through to distribution and to do it in a step-by-step manner and kind of go through different motions of, where we are at, where you're at, and just kind of almost in a way cohabitate a method of creation here. And the idea is to try and help you get your work to distribution. And so we wanted to start with kind of the basic understandings and kind of the basic things about being a filmmaker and also just kind of discuss the really rudimentary things about where format is and how that all works. And then just give you guys, anybody who's listening, just insights on where we've been and where we've come from in this idea. Most of my stuff will be coming from the days when I was running on sets and doing a lot of that stuff into the digital age. And then we also have Michael has a little more experience with digital distribution and some of his work. And, it's just something we wanted to outline this year as being something to give back in a way. And especially we're also in the completion, the final stages of Project Astral, where it's this film that's kind of taken its own kind of force and idea, and it's something I'm really excited for us to finish. So that's kind of the one of the starting ideas of it. Michael, have you had anything you wanted to kind of add to that?
Yeah, sure. Handful of things I think we'll cover in the discussion at large. This kind of came out of the workshops that we were doing over on the writer's block last year. So it's going to follow that format loosely, but be kind of customized to this scene, I think, more and the work that, we have to do to pursue, film work and distribution and stuff. It resembles in a lot of ways indie authorship, but it is, I would say, exponentially more involved. I kind of think of the process of media kind of being like, words and pictures at a baseline level, audio, maybe a step up from there. And then, putting all that stuff together, you can formulate film from those things. So, I don't want to say we're going to do all of the same stuff that we did over there, because we're not. But at the same time, I think that if you were participating in any of those things or have been listening on the podcast, then this will be familiar, but perhaps some new fog of war, or even better, greatly insightful from the conversations participants that aren't me and Chris. Additionally, we are going to record these sessions. They will be coming out on the podcast platforms that I distribute through. So if you're a subscriber to Spotify or Apple Music, I think there's actually go out on their podcast app. Maybe it goes out on Apple Music too. I am not sure. But all the rest, find it up on YouTube and the handful of platforms that I push that stuff out to as well. Yeah.
And I think what's always good about this is no matter when you came into film, how you started, where you are, like there's a lot of fundamentals that still carry. And there's also things to understand, even if it's to work against them. The thing about art and mediums and everything that goes into what art is put upon, it's all about trying to understand how to give that audience an experience, whether it is an experience that they're expecting or an experience they're not. And that's the value in understanding your fundamentals of as far as format and why distribution methods are the way they are, why things are the way they are. It's always to fight against. It's always to not even fight against. I would say to try and improve on a medium that you love. So in order to kind of start this, there's a lot of things about whatever your idea is that you should really start to consider. What's great about where we are right now is it's probably the most, and I say this lightly, but I can explain it if anyone who's here wants to know, and if any in further workshops we want to talk about. But we are in probably the most fluid time of cinema that there is. It's, there are so many different ways that the unions quantify what they will and will not understand as that is a qualified production. There is a lot of distribution methods for whatever length and understanding you have for your film. We're at a point where equipment to do any kind of film, not, and we can get even more specific as far as when you're deciding these, but we have equipment is at the lowest price it's ever been to do almost any type of film you want to do. And and then we have AI, and that really kind of takes that to another level entirely. Mostly because if none of the, the facets of classic making a film, like, getting to budgets and this, that, and the other, if none of those things are within your reach, AI gives you an ability to make these sequences, make these stories, to then give to an audience and see if they want to partake in it. And then if they do, you can take that even step further by going hybrid production and, really still delivering this high production, high quality story to your audience. But then if you want to take it even further and go beyond hybrid and go completely traditional film production, there's, as long as you can get the budget to do so, there's nothing really stopping you. There's really nothing stopping you, especially because within all of that, the distribution methods of getting directly to your audience are just there waiting for you. And they're waiting for you to do, not just interact with them and give them your content, but you have to even go further than that. And they're waiting for you to market it. They're waiting for you to find that audience. They're waiting for you to do pretty much everything, which is kind of the caveat of all of this. But to start, it's one of those things that whatever idea you have, and there's a bunch of different methods of doing. There's the Exploding Kittens card set that helps you ideate for films and screenplays. There's, Save the Cat. There's a bunch of different work ways and that within to how to formulate your story and how to make that work for you. But it's all about understanding what kind of story you want to tell. And then after you really get into that, and after whatever that opens up for you, then there's the length of which that story is told. And that can also help decide some things, especially if you're just at the very beginning and you're like, well, I have an idea, and now I don't know how long I want to make this idea work for. And both of these things are in the very fluid parts of this. This is the very, very malleable parts of whatever this journey is. And the thing about the beginning stages is it really is the most exciting part till you get into actual production, at least for me, because this is where everything's still fresh, everything's still hot, everything's still it's still sexy to really interact with this. It hasn't started becoming something that you want to take as seriously yet. So there's still almost 98% fun factor to this. And you can look through history on how people are writing this and how people do this. I remember watching a video recently about Matthew McConaughey talking about his quickest yes was to Steven Soderbergh for Magic Mike. And, the guy Soderbergh hadn't even written the screenplay yet, but he had the idea. And he explained it to McConaughey, and of course McConaughey said yes, because Steven Soderbergh has a great track record. And then asked about his character Dallas, and had one question about something he can give him, and he talks about how Dallas is really into UFOs and let the actor go and play. And this is the thing, when you're in this period of time, it's very it's the most amount of fun you could really have, because there's no limitation. All of the questions, all the things that we're going to go over, they haven't been answered yet. You're still just like, holy shit, I like to put A, B into Z and then make that in the place of this and put it in this time. And you can, the sky's the limit. But when you're deciding these things, there used to be very few classifications. And this is what I mean about there being, it's the most open time for making a movie, is because classifications have changed dramatically. You got to figure at the time the movie Phone Booth with Colin Farrell came out, like there was a controversy about the length of that film and being considered for any awards or anything like that, because classically there's not been many films that were made at that length. And it's not even how long it was, it's how short it was. I think Phone Booth's runtime is under 60 minutes. I think it's 58 minutes. But the classification stood at that time for anything under 60 minutes was considered a short film. Anything over 60 minutes was considered a feature film. There also is the standards for serial television, so episodic television. And those, those have also changed pretty dramatically too, because traditional television was 26 episodes. It became 22. And then miniseries kind of had this miasma of different ways that they understand how miniseries worked. But miniseries was usually 10 or so episodes, 10, 8, 6. Those were miniseries episodes. And then there were specials that got into this other kind of thing about that. It's very confusing because of where we were, but where we are now, it kind of makes sense. If you're doing a show now, like Fallout is, I think, only 8 episodes. Landman is only 10 episodes. So, and the other thing is the length. They were doing 26 episode seasons. I think it was 27 minutes total that they had, or 26 minutes total that they had to fill up. And then as advertising and this and that came around, that number shrunk pretty dramatically. But then we came out with the hour-long episodes and such like that. So it gets a little crazy. But for a movie, there's micro shorts, which is under 2 minutes, social media oriented to the max. There's short films, which is 2 to 10 minutes. It's basically starts to get into this like calling card narrative where you're like, this is what I could do with story. This is what I want to do with story. Maybe if it's even a smaller idea for a larger film. There's traditional shorts, which is around 10 to 40 minutes. This gets into the short feature area where there's a lot of distributors who want to put this alongside movies that are, pretty high production value. But the idea is that at the 10 to 40 minutes, you're getting an audience to sit for this and to watch this and to get really into this. And then there's the very short and the mid-length. They're 20 and 30 minutes, kind of stalwart, very, very sharp on the 20 and 30 minutes. Some festivals will really look at that as just being that. They're a weird spot because it doesn't really, I've never really seen a festival go too deep into this number, but there are classifications for this. Now, once you get past the 40-minute mark into 40 and above, it gets to this idea that it could very well be close to a feature. But go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to talk a little bit about that particular angle because I've got the original Chicago 1893 documentary. It runs, I think, 47 minutes and 47 seconds or something like that. It's technically feature length because of some of these designations. But, to me, when I was making it, the thinking was, I don't know all these technical things. I kind of fell backwards into making the thing in 2020 as I got started converting the book over and putting everything on screen, discovering, what was happening on that side of things that I had no exposure to at the time was, again, like the fog of war thing, just kind of like taking a step realizing, what the terrain is and the environment and stuff like that. And I thought, some kind of like pipe dream idea that maybe I would get it shown on, like local broadcast. I'd worked with local stations in the past and was thinking, hey, this might be suitable. I'm going to leave enough time for promo and XYZ. I think 12, 13 minutes is probably enough. And that just sort of happened naturally. Truth be told, I ran out of material. I didn't have anything else to say in the thing. Luckily, I think it just kind of managed to go that way in the sense of runtime. But now, fast forward X number of years, I'm working on exploring our national parks volume 3 and front loading the idea of distribution in terms of attaining, streaming distribution on the platforms that we're watching, whether that's Amazon or others. They have their requirements. There's kind of like a cascading set of requirements. The further you kind of go down, then the requirements get looser, but also, the return on what you're providing them, I think, also diminishes. I don't want to speak ill of any platform. They're fantastic to give me or any of us the opportunity, really. But at the same time, if we want to try and swing for the fences, then I think that it is important that we try to raise ourselves to the requirements of those out of the gate, and knowing them up front, enables that sort of thing. So, if you're looking at, let's say, a Tubi, a great independent streamer, kind of giving the indie classes of filmmaking opportunity for reach and exposure and also monetization, they're looking for stuff, that's at least 45 minutes long. And that's for a standalone release. Now, do they take other stuff? I would assume they have or do or will. But when you're looking at one piece, then you need to try and check all their boxes. If you're doing a series of things, then that's like a whole other set of issues that I am not, I'm not cognizant of because I'm not producing that stuff yet. I think that for people making a series of releases or a show that is going to chase after distribution, again, think about what is going to give you the best opportunity to secure the distribution, out of the gate. That is something that I talk about here regularly, but also just broadly, whether that's books or film or audio, music, specifically out of that, whatever the case might be. I think that you really want to think about how to get it in front of people and how to monetize it out of the gate. If you only want social recognition, that's fine, perfectly well and good. But I think that if you want to create an ecosystem that is going to enable you to grow audience and keep doing things and create returns for yourself or the people that are helping you finance these projects or investing into you as an artist or whatever, then we want to be able to make the most out of the time and effort that we put into the projects, plainly. That's my thought on it.
For sure. And I mean, this is where this starts to get even more solidified, because the other part of this is any of these decisions you make can almost immediately, if they're under 60 minutes, will very likely push you out of theatrical distribution. It's one of those things that's shorter than 60 minutes or even at 60 minutes is very difficult to sell to a traditional theatrical distributor. It's already difficult to sell to them in general. But theatrical distributors, they like, there's always this golden rule about when you're writing screenplays, that it needs to be an 80-page or 90-page screenplay. Hour 20 minutes, hour and a half is considered this kind of golden area of length for a film. And if you have anything under that, as far as timing or even the script itself, if you're just selling the script, it gets very difficult to sell to a major distributor that doesn't want to also take that script and then refine it to be in that 120, in that 90 or 80 page area. And it's one of those things where and the reason why that's done is there's a rule of thumb that anytime you're writing a screenplay, it's 1 minute per page. I've had people try and fight this, where they're saying they wrote a 17-page script that takes up 45 minutes. I still to this day don't know how that person even thought that was possible. But yeah, it's one of those things that as you get, and this is why what you said was about length, television and episodes, and how television and now streaming had quantified what a feature is, has changed a lot of this. Because you could have these like kind of short features and be something as a feature on a TV channel or on a streaming channel. And then this isn't also to say that if you do complete self-distribution, that you can basically kick out all this format and everything and do as you please. Because if you're leading the conversation, it's a wholly different cadence on how you could do whatever. You can make shorts, you can make full length, you can do really long movies, you can do really short. But the idea of what you're going towards distribution wise, as you lock in any of these things, could change that. For instance, if you're doing micro shorts, like one of the big verticals right now is micro dramas. It's vertical filmed or vertical cut, vertical framed micro dramas that are episodic in nature. I think their format is something like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes for each episode, and it's a big vertical. It was a big vertical overseas. In a lot of the Asian territories, this really took off. There is also a big adoption of the micronovella, the novella, the soap opera type of thing going on there, and that bounced back and forth from a lot of their classic love stories to the classic love stories of Central America, and and a lot of the influence here from various different things. There's also Italian influence because they have their own kind of versions of these things. So it's all a melting pot of different cultures kind of deciding some of these lengths because of how they just were limited to doing it. There's also budgetary concerns here, which this is the other part about being a filmmaker in this day and age, is that when you were a writer, you didn't have to know one fucking thing about filming anything. You just didn't matter. You wrote the story is cohesive, it works together, you sold the script, move on to the next script. But in these days, and this is something that I was talking to the guys at IndieKin about recently, it's very hard to say that filmmaker kind of encompasses the entirety of what you need to do. Because creatives in general are doing multiple amounts of things. Like the relationship between me and Michael, like Michael is more, I would say, in the more traditional writer sense and traditional musician sense. And there's this idea that like between the two of us, like him starting into making films and making shorts and making documentaries and making these like, these stories that are about the exploration of, within these places and having to be this reflective thing on a journey that you take from A to B. Like it's what is really the big part about being a creative these days, because it's not just about if you write the story, you don't have to know about how it's filmed. If you write there's a movie called The Amateurs with Jeff Bridges, and it's about this small town of people that have to. Sorry, I had a phone call. There's a small town of people, like they're making a porn movie, and in the movie, what's funny is one of the scenes that the writer who they have, he writes this like big helicopter scene, and it's like we can't afford any of this stuff. And it's also a porn movie. Like, how are you putting helicopters and this and all this together? And it's one of those scenes that's great about learning and understanding your limits. And there's also a big movement that people, if you want to look into it, it's called resource filmmaking. There's a bunch of people who have different versions of it. But it's one of those things about understanding your resources and utilizing them. Because, I mean, just in the traditional film sense, the financial model for, let's say, a 16 millimeter production, I can go through a lot of the details that I looked through on this because there's also, per foot of how much it costs. So it's $65 to $85 per 100 foot of daylight spool, which is I think it's ISO 400, which is pretty classic. And it's 50 cents to 75 cents per foot to scan it and process it. All in all, if you wanted to go the traditional film route, if you wanted to be Christopher Nolan, if you wanted to be Quentin Tarantino, and instead of using 70 millimeter, maybe you use 16 millimeter because you're not insane, the cost is $34 per minute to utilize that stuff. And then to have it finished is $136 to $150 per finished minute of that. So, like, even a micro short that's 2 minutes long, the raw cost of all your raw materials will be $68. And it will be, for finishing that, for getting it processed and making it usable, will be anywhere from, $272 to $300.
Is that the compiled cost of that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask. I just wanted to hear like the per minute cost, like in totality, because that's insane, but that's, what it is. It's awesome.
Right. I mean, and so there are advantages and there are disadvantages to all of that. Using regular film, you're getting the most, and this is all opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. You're getting like the most raw experience of being a filmmaker you possibly can get. Because film is very punishing. It's very difficult to handle on set. This is just for the raw material and this is just you with a camera and film. Not actors, not locations, none of that stuff. It's just you with a camera that uses film. 16 millimeter there's 8 millimeter too, but it's almost unusable for this type of situation. But 16 millimeter, Clerks, I think, was filmed on 16 millimeter. Loads of stuff was filmed on 16 millimeter. It's probably the most used emulsion medium because of how cheap and versatile it is. And the cameras that use it are fucking great. You can do a lot of crazy things with those cameras. There's somebody on YouTube who just built a 16 millimeter camera. So it's one of those things that's just raw, So when you're thinking about your times, you also want to think about what it's going to cost you per minute. And, when you get up to digital, even though your upfront cost of purchasing the camera or even renting the camera would be pretty high, something like a Red Komodo is like $450 a day. The Blackmagic cameras, they're really cheap. They're less than $100 a day. I've rented a few Blackmagic cameras. The 4K production and the Ursa we got for $125 because it was new. But like the FX6, which is the movie The Creator was filmed on. They use an FX3. They didn't even use an FX6. Sorry. But even the FX6, which is its big brother, is $150 to $190 a day. Now that's digital. So if you have a card in there, you can just keep deleting and adding as much as you want until you fill up the card. Then you do whatever you got to do. But their cost per minute, and it's because there's no processing, there's none of that. It's just about putting that into a computer, getting it offloaded and editing it, cutting it, putting it out. Let's say you do even like light color correction, is only $10 to $25 per finished minute. So it's staggeringly different. $136 to $150 per finished minute after processing and everything you need, going all the way down to $10 to $25 per minute. So that micro short that's 2 minutes long becomes a $20 to $50 issue as far as what you need per minute of that. It'll still cost you a bit, but the other part of this is like any of the stuff I said, your phone also takes 4K video, most likely. My phone takes 4K. Most of the iPhones, I think, from the iPhone 12 or 13 on probably do 4K?
I'm not the person to ask about that, but I can say that a friend of mine who does just a slew of corporate videography work and is a complete nerd about the technicals, has adopted an iPhone as his second camera for his shoots and basically relies on that for kind of getting a secondary angle on interviews or any events and stuff like that. I don't know which version he got. It was a couple of years ago when he moved over to the Apple ecosystem. He's been very happy with that. And, while he maintains a regular traditional camera, he's also, using that other piece of equipment and is satisfied with the results of it in terms of mixing that material into the other footage. So I am not exactly sure when they adopted 4K on iPhones, but yeah.
It's been a minute. I could definitely say that. Yeah, I mean, I have a Pixel 2 XL next to me, which I'm using a Pixel 9, and I have a Pixel 2, and both of those phones do 4K. One does better 4K than the other. But, that's the thing. You can do a lot of this on nearly anything that records an image. The thing about, even what I said earlier about 8mm, 8mm is a viable medium. It's not as reliable as 16. But it's all a matter of what you have capacity for, because digital is whatever the device costs for you to buy and or rent, and do whatever it is you need to do with it, return it and keep it, whatever you do and rent it back out, whatever you want to do. It's really up to you. And then now we get into what I was talking about with AI. AI changes a lot of this because the problem then becomes compute and failure. It's very difficult to say how much AI will help you or not help you strictly as it's on its own without any hybrid workflow or anything. There's like the way that it works and the way the burns work, and this is getting a lot. The data I have is older because they're going from Gen 3 alpha. We're up to, we're at 4.5, and 4.5 just had image to video, which is really exceptional. It's really clean. It does a lot of really good stuff. And they're gauging at about 4 to 10 attempts per 5-second clip. So it's, now it's something like, 50 cents to $1 per generation attempt. That could be a lot of generation attempts. That could be very few. The issue with AI is it's only a matter of how much you are willing to deal with the system that exists to help you make this thing. Now, if you hybridize your workflow and you do things like video to video, you do things like image to video, where you take these stills and you try and instance a story from it, there's a lot of good that can come from that. But it's one of those things that the data I had something closer to $400 per finished minute if you consider everything, everything. And it was one of those things about it's so amorphous still that it's not really established. And we've seen PJAs, a number of people kind of come out and say, oh, this only cost me $1,300. This only cost me $300. This only cost me $500. And you see this massive piece of work. But much alike animation, it's all a matter of your time and whatever you could put into it and whatever you're willing to accept from whatever it can't give you. Because as great as animation is, if you watch old Ralph Bakshi and a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the really big classics, you will see in between shots and stuff that doesn't look totally like as clean as, say, Disney animation. And you'll see a lot of the independents they just take, they kind of take their own way and they do it their own way. which is it works. But that's the thing about AI is there's no real strong data on this yet. If you take it as a VFX, you take it as like mocap and stuff like that, you could change up that model at $400 per finished minute. You can make it something, like $100 and $200 per finished minute. But that's considering a lot of stuff. That's considering doing any type of professional editing or any type of like upscaling. There's compute with that. There's a bunch of stuff that you would need. And there's also the machine you would need. A camera is a very simple machine. A computer that could run this locally is not going to be a very simple machine. It's going to be a pretty beefy. It's at least an $800, $900 expense that you have to take if you want to do anything locally. And then that has its caveats to it. However, the openness to do that, kind of like where we are with Project Astral, is like it's taken us a long time to make it. But the other part is that we're engaging with our audience, in that way, where it's like, this is going to take us a while. We're going to make good on all of our promises, but this piece is going to be self-distributed. Everything's going to come from us. Now, all that considered, you have a lot of options that that come into this idea of how long you want your film to be, how much could you afford that film to be in length, and then making that story within those limitations, or even taking the larger part of that story and making it something smaller to see how much you can handle those limitations. This is all the other part about artistry. It's really on whatever it is that you can handle and you can get funded that could take you to whatever level you want to go with it. But yeah, so within length and medium, those are kind of your big broad strokes as far as what that will decide for distribution, what that will decide for your story, how you can make that all work. Those are like the big broad strokes at that. If you decide those two things, you now have this idea of where you can go with this, and that's where distribution is why it's a big deal to understand that your film needs to go towards a distributor of some sort, whether it's self, whether it's VOD, whether it's AVOD, whether it's theatrical, whatever it is, because you now have a path that is well traveled. It's it's not off the beaten path. Almost everything has been beaten down where you have a path. You don't have to make the same stops along the way. You don't have to, you're going to have your own successes and failures of every project, but these paths are there for you to take. There's nothing stopping you in those senses. So now that's the very broad strokes. That's the amount of time. Those are the mediums you could use. And, now it's all about now after all of those things, it's all about your distribution and whatever you're going to do with this finished work that's going to make it worth it for you to have finished it. And, well, Michael, you think that are we at a good point with that? And should we, because I have more notes that I don't really think is really worth it, but there's also the distribution methods, which kind of go into this whole other paradigm of what we're talking about. What do you think?
Sorry, I'm recording today and my computer was getting a little bit bogged down because I was running too much stuff. So I had to kind of change gears, but Whitney's up on stage and, I would guess she has some thoughts to add or experience to contribute to the conversation, before we even think about what else to get into. She's been up here for a while.
Sure. Whitney, what's up?
Oh, cool. Thank you. Michael, you mentioned earlier one of your friends was using an iPhone. I think that's a really great starting point. I was using an iPhone 13 with like a 2 terabyte memory. Okay, having an external hard drive too is something that's very, very helpful just for storing these projects, because it can really bog down a computer. It's good to have everything centrally located. I mean, if you don't pay your cloud bill for a month, everything vanishes. So just having this, investing in a really good external hard drive, even two. When I made my first documentary, I had $8,000 and I thought, wow, I'm going to be able to make the best film, and it's like in reality, I wasn't able to rent equipment with it just because of where I live. And like the true sovereignty of being able to really make what you want, you have to own your own camera, like in my experience. Just because you have to buy insurance too when you rent equipment. They want to see, like, oh, 2 insurance policies, the fancier the camera you get. And just being able to afford all the people too, to operate and figuring out the interviews. So having some really good lapel mics as well. So like, anytime that there's a sale on equipment, I'm always looking at the tech flyers and eyeing up equipment the second it goes on sale, just buying it. A set of really good hidden lapel mics. You can have really shitty visuals, but the second you start to lose audio, I think the audience just zones right out. So I had to do things like unplug the fridge, unplug the freezer, turn off the radio, make sure that I was recording the background noise of the room and using that as a baseline. And yeah, just making sure that these things are in place. Like you can do whatever you want when you own your own camera. The second that you start applying for these development funds and production funds, you got to play their game. And that's when these production costs go into like $15,000 a minute. I'm really struggling with that right now because I want production funds, but there's all these strings attached. They're like, oh, well, who's your story editor? Who's your executive producer? It's like, well, there goes 20,000 out the window. Do I really need those people? Probably not. I could probably just make it myself, but just to get the actual, I don't even know why I'm playing this game anymore, to be honest. It's an option, it's a choice, but I'm just going to keep playing it and see where it goes. But I know at the end of the day, if worse comes to worse, I could do it all with AI. I don't really need to hire all these above the line and crew people, even though I'd love to hire all my friends, to help do it. It can just kind of get made. So that's my 2 bits. Oh yeah, I also invested in an agent. I use I was lucky. I was like really early to onboard with this one agent that one of my friends built. And so like I pay, you know, way less than the monthly price. But if people were to sign up today, it's like $400 US a month, which is, really costly. But I feel like that is your ultimate production assistant. That is your ultimate story editor. And for anybody who's working in the industry, this kind of tool can just help you do your job a little better.
For the folks listening, what is the platform that you're using, or maybe the agent that you're working with? Everybody's always looking for resources.
Oh, yeah, I didn't want to show, but I'm using Pixio Machine. I feel like there's been a lot of growing pains with it over the past couple of years, and it's at a place now where the filmmaking is almost autonomous. Soon it's going to be connected to, basically any models that you want to connect it to. It's great for reviewing like the synopsis, creating pitch packages, but I'm always cautious. Like I don't just submit it as is because I feel like, there's always some things that are a little bit off that need some refinement. But it gives you a really great starting point. I'm also using it for game design, which is another form, of filmmaking, like being able to set up your world in Unity and doing filming right inside of a game world. Like I think that's really an interesting take. Like I was looking at locations and the location that I wanted to rent was $5,000 an hour. And like, sorry, I just saved some pictures of the location and dropped it into an AI model. And I was like, boom, I'm there. Cool.
Hell yeah. And I think, what's also, I mean, I think I'm not a point and click adventure game guy, but even the ones that I have played are some of the best stories I've heard in a long time. And then even one of them is just a lot of fun. Like I loved Willie Beamish from on Sega CD. I played that game over and over and over and over again. They also have it's like legendary, and I can't believe I can't fucking remember the name. Night Trap, which is like it's I don't recommend it to absolutely everybody because it's very classic 90s in a lot of different ways, and it's full motion video on CD for the Sega CD. But it's one of those things like point and click adventures and a lot of the stuff like that. It could be its own form of storytelling. It could be its own form of filmmaking. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting things about if you want to own, like I own my own camera. I own a lot of my own lighting equipment, and like a couple of tips I'd give to people is if you're looking to start doing that, one of the things that I was told early on, which I still hold to this day, I still get alerts on eBay to this day, is like your support equipment, not just audio, which is something that Whitney said, which is absolutely 100% true, and support equipment. So for lighting, I always have an alert on two different brands, Colortran and Berkey. And both of those were lighting brands in the 70s and 80s that were like the shit. They were the best. And what's great about these is they were meant to hold lights that are way heavier than what we have today. I mean, way heavier. Most of the support equipment, most of the stands are made out of like good, solid stainless steel and stuff like that. It's very, very strong stuff. And you could usually get some of those stands for far less than you can buy any new C stand or any of the new stands that exist today. There's also old C stands, Century stands that you could get that'll help whatever lighting you have. You'll be able to support it almost without a doubt, because all of these things were built for spots and floods and keys and all these other all these other lights that were meant to be hot, heavy, and they were meant to have real big chunky cables that like it's almost heavy in its own, the cables. There are so many aspects that now that those brands have kind of fallen out of popularity, a Berkey or Colortran stand could easily supplant any of the new, crappier stands that they make today. They make a lot of like stands for these type of stuff, but they make them for it. So something that's meant to handle 40 pounds or 30 pounds, it's not really going to handle much more than that. And they built these things to as much of the spec as they can. But Berkey and Colortran stands, some of those lights were like 60, 70, 100 pounds. I know the big fill lights were like an easy 90, 100 pound light. And they were also not only 90, 100 pound light they needed support, but they also couldn't allow it to move. So there would be these stands that are built like brick shit houses. They are just so good. And definitely if you're going to start, acquire, if you're a filmmaker like me, I'm a gearhead. I love like gear. I love things that help. So there's the old school Berkey, old school Colortran, and for camera, it's you can't get much better than Manfrotto, but the older Manfrotto stands, the monster legs and stuff like that, will be able to handle any camera you put on it. And then even if you have a much lighter camera, the way that these fluid moves happen on these stands, on these tripods, are just absolutely, I get goosebumps when I use them because they're just built so well. And that's the other thing.
Sorry, Chris, what about these like handheld gimbals for a smartphone, like that actually track the action?
Oh, 100%.
It's almost like having an extra person or an extra set of hands, right? And like that's a great investment, even though it might be like a couple $100. And I just wanted to know what your favorite time of day to film is.
Golden hour, baby, any day. I hate golden hour because it is the best time to film. And I've always at golden hour, I've had both of those instances where, I mean, no one ever does it. Everyone always does the dawn. No one ever wants to do dusk because there's so many people coming home. There's so many things you have to fucking consider. So everyone does the dawn golden hour because there's, you can get in, do your thing. There's probably not a lot of sound pollution. There's probably not a lot of light pollution outside of what you need, but you get that golden hour at the very beginning of the day when the sun just rises. And I mean, it's sick how good that looks on camera. But I will say, speaking about support as far as stabilization, you got to figure where gimbals came in, Steadicams went out. So there's a lot of old Steadicam rigs that are very good. I mean, Steadicam rigs, the problem with Steadicam rigs, in conversation with gimbals, the Steadicam rigs are usually a vest, a arm that is meant to support a camera, both vertically, horizontally, and it's also meant to supplant your movement and make a very smooth shot. But yeah, like gimbals are also old enough where you can get an older version of a gimbal and you could do amazing things with it, even though it's not these, really small, tight, sexy things that DJI makes some of the greatest shit that exists for gimbals. But I wouldn't ever put a full, not only the vests and Steadicam rig. The handheld ones, I have a few of those that are just meant to be stabilizers, and they take a lot of time and energy to work with. But the Steadicam vests and rigs are almost better in a lot of ways than gimbals because it doesn't take a whole heck of a lot to understand how they work. They only kind of work very certain ways, but it's attached to you. It's very, and they're very well made. I mean, same thing, couple $100, you could probably get an older Steadicam rig that is, somebody's selling at a estate sale. a lot of these studios are going out of business. If you live in a city that has a studio that's going out of business, if you can look in whatever they got going on for sale. And then there's also the trickle down sales where even if you don't get it direct from there, somebody else will buy it and then they will stop using it and then you can buy it or rent it. So that's the other thing. Support, it goes every which way. If you get something that's older, you'll probably get a good price on it, but it'll have its caveats. If you get something newer, like the newer stands and the newer lighting stands, the newer tripods, the gimbals and stuff like that, they're going to be way more compact and lighter, but they're going to be more expensive. But I will say, both have their value. And that's the thing. If you're using even an iPhone, and you have just a way to mount that to a stand, mount that to a gimbal, mount that to a Steadicam, like you will change the way you make movies because of how this tool works. That's the other thing about tools. It's even when you're talking about film, digital, AI, they have their ways and their limitations. Classic, really well known. Everyone probably knows this story. When Kevin Smith was making Clerks, he had made a decision at some point to go black and white for the film. And his DOP was like fantastic. And the reason why is because when you go black and white, the way that records, it's not recording color. So you don't have to worry about if you have two different color lights in a scene that are, lighting your main actor, that as long as they expose properly to the same exposure and they're the same strength, it doesn't matter what the color temperature is. And that could make your DOP's life a lot easier. But if you're not a DOP, knowing that black and white could really help you cheat a lot of those things could really help as well. They actually even make some cameras. There's a red camera and there's another camera that's strictly black and white. The sensor only records black and white. But that's, another workaround. It gets you that much further. And that's what's great about some of this equipment. It's just the way it could help you do whatever it is you want to do is really key. I think She Crypto is coming up. Hey, She Crypto. Oh, go ahead. Whoa.
Hi, guys.
Hey,
how's
what's up?
everybody doing?
Another beautiful day. How are you?
Pretty good. Trying to stay warm. I just wanted to say that sometimes preparedness is like half the battle. I think as artists, filmmakers, we are problem solvers and storytellers. And I feel like we do this because we have to do it. And I could sense like the fatigue And I think everybody's just tired, child. Like it's been a lot, what I'm saying, COVID and then all the stuff with the industry, and people are exhausted, just emotionally drained. But I do feel like whoever's listening to this is more for whoever's listening to this. If you prepare yourself and you are compelled or to tell a story, you just have to be prepare yourself. It's more about, I would say, that, and then the money. You can save up like I did. I saved up income tax checks. I bought my camera. I knew that there was a chance that I would be doing majority of the work. I didn't think that I was going to be doing everything, but that it just pushed me to the limit as to what I could do, so then I know that the next time the sky's literally the limit and beyond, and I feel like if you're compelled to do something, just do the work and study the aesthetic that appeals to you. Don't just go out and if you see somebody, DP, I forget his last name, but his first name is Shane or something. And say, for instance, he did like something and you liked the camera, everybody has to have this camera. That doesn't mean that camera is meant for you. Actually study the aesthetic, go and actually put your mitts on the camera, what I'm saying, find out what exactly it takes to do what you need to do with the camera. And just if you don't have the resources, or you're staying in a place where making movies is not necessarily a thing, which sometimes worked in your behalf, you can get away with a lot of things where you can get for free or almost not for free. You can go on eBay and order, things, I know there's tariff stuff now, but I ordered stuff and I waited for months for that stuff to come, like months, but it was so cheap that it actually fit in what we were trying to do. So if you're compelled to do a story, just be prepared. Do your research. There's so many different tutorials that you can take, on YouTube, if you don't have an editor, if you can't afford all this stuff. I did it, but I actually, did have experience on producing films and helping people make films. I learned how not to make a film because we did help someone, and we did the whole 16 millimeter thing, and it was crazy. I was on the thing, they call it a steam deck, and I was like marking all the sound. It was something out of a horror movie. And then and then after that, then we went in, and then I helped somebody else do something, and then you get to learn how to make a movie, how not to make a movie by working with people. So immerse yourself in your spaces wherever you are, and just learn from as many people as you can, and don't really expect anything, and just take the blessings as they come. And and even with the rejection, there's a blessing there. But I just wanted to say, whoever's listening to this, the preparedness is pretty much where you're gonna kind of like get over there, because if you have a story that you want to tell, as long as you're prepared and you take the time to prepare and you do your research, and I'm with Chris, like you got to have your own, especially if you really want to do this, I think you should have your own stuff, make sure, and I'm really a fan of older gear. Like I feel like, they're just not making stuff like that anymore, so like if I could get my hand on something that's so-called vintage, if they made it like 2014, which I know that's not too vintage, but it is, like in cameras, I'd rather have that, and it's new too, than like something else and it's not giving the same kind of aesthetic. So just make sure you study. Make sure you just don't go out and get the camera, the Sony camera everybody is using, because that might not be for you. That might not be what is giving, But yeah, I'm happy that you're still having these spaces, because the Web3 film is kind of dry, son.
Oh yeah, I mean that's kind of the reason why I'm doing it, is that that needs to be a rebuild in some sense, not in the sense that it's gonna, like in the earlier days where we were hanging around saying, oh, it's gonna overtake Hollywood. Hollywood kind of overtook itself and sunk itself in a lot of ways. So it's like at this point, I'd rather just give more tools to people to do whatever it is. Like if you want to do Web3 film, you want to do everything. Like I'm vowing for the next year that anything I make will have a Web3 component, Film3 component. Sorry, it's just what I believe. It's how I feel that should go. It's who I want to most interact with, is those people who really want to get in depth with that. And I think one of the other things that She Crypto said that is, I can think of at least one instance, is David Sandberg, who it's well known now, but when he made Annabelle, he was already a VFX guy, but the first directing job he got was Annabelle. And on the set, he had a Blackmagic pocket cinema camera, the very first one that they ever made. He kept it with him and I've done this too with my Canon T2i. I just used it as a director's viewfinder, because if you ever look up how much director's viewfinders cost, even the older ones, it's outrageous. But if you put a scope on a camera, you put a lens that's comparable to what you're using, they're using a 50, you use a 50, they're using a 35, you use a 35, you can get the framing you want and everything, and you kind of see what this is going to possibly look like. Your DOP is, of course, going to take that, to the next level, because if you have a DOP on set, that should be what they do. But he used this camera on several different parts of the film and was getting, of course, the eyes rolling and stuff whenever he would use it. But a lot of the shots that he was able to kind of like guerrilla make and guerrilla do, they made it into the final film. And it was only an aspect that he just knew what he wanted, and he did a shot of it and just tried to do it. It's like, oh, we'll just test it this way and stuff like that, and made it into the final film. So it really is like, and that's a professional film set. That was a while ago, but it's still a professional film set. And even if that never came, having that ability to understand that your camera the best way you possibly can, whatever camera it is, you just understand its caveats, you work within their limitations, and you make that image the best you possibly can. My T2i, like, I still use it to this day. It can record raw up to like a low res image. And that's sometimes all I needed. There was if I was paid for a shoot and I didn't have any control over the environment and the person was going straight for web as far as what their distribution was, I fucking flipped that thing into raw, and I was able to get shots that without any lights, without anything except for a really sweet old school lens. I have a lens from the 1970s that I used to put on there all the time for every single music video shoot, because it just always paid. It just always came out great. And the color was always perfect. And like that thing, being able to understand your tools that way, that's like artisan level shit. And that's why what She Cryptos just said is exactly right. Do your research, play with cameras. If you live in New York City, go to B&H. And like, if you like a camera that's there on the floor, look at the earlier versions of that camera. If it's like a Mark IV, look at the Mark I or the Mark II and see what that could give you. Because like the C100, I hate to get into gear a little bit too deep, but the Canon C100 is like one of the best cheap cinema cameras I could think of, because the earlier versions of that camera had a lot of the stuff that the later cameras do have. It's only 1080p, but the thing about 1080p, when it's done right, it could look so much better than shitty 4K, which is a lot of cameras shoot shitty 4K. And it's one of those things, like, look into what, handle your stuff, try and, see if there's a convention, if you could get in there, whatever it is that you can get your hands on some gear and equipment. And if you like something and it's like, oh, this version from this year is too much money, look at how old that company is. Like Berkey and Colortran, like I was just saying, those are from the 70s and 80s. I think they're actually from the 50s and 60s, but in the 70s and 80s, they were the top. So they were just pumping out like stands and this and that. So that equipment is $50 to $60 today, where it was thousands of dollars then. But you could feel it when you use it, because I have these stands, and I mean, every time I bust them out on a set, if I'm on a big set and somebody's just came for grip support, if I bring these stands with me every single time, the lighting tech, the grips, they'll always be like, what the fuck is that? And I put it up and I'm like, what is it? And they're like, oh, the stand, it's this, it's that. I'm like, yeah. That's what old equipment can do for you. But new equipment has its place, has its value. The same way that any one of those formats that I was talking about earlier have their value, equipment does too, especially if it's well made and you got the price right for what it is you need, for what it is it can give you. And that's the same thing with people. Like support structure, very important. Like what Whitney is talking about earlier with agents and how those could could help you figure out your story and figure out your idea. I mean, the same thing with people. People are worth their weight in salt if you can get them to want to interact with that on that level. But you also, the thing about people is what's great, also sometimes shitty, is that you have to interact with people on that level. If they have an idea, if they have something, you have to give your honest, as best response as you possibly can to be supportive in that. But that's the thing about doing your research and making sure whatever it is you use is what you need and what you want. It's why, like, for me, I'm doing 100% AI now, but the goal is to go hybrid. The goal for me is to do hybrid production, where you shoot actors, maybe even clothe the actors, but the backdrops, a lot of the setups, they're going to be higher production using AI to do the VFX layer. Because it's always the problem I had with anything I ever did was like the VFX layer was always the limitation. Because I just wasn't good enough at Houdini, Blender, fucking After Effects, all these different things. And that's, that's the story I want to deliver. Like, there are things in that I want to. I don't live in a city that could make that delivery just that much prettier, even though the downtown of Binghamton does have its like quality to it. Go ahead, Whitney.
I was just wondering if you do much video to video work with AI, like gathering your own stock footage and running it through AI.
So for Project Astral, I did that for one of the sequences, and at the time I did it, wasn't the best time to do video to video. Now, however, I will say the reason why I'm pointing in this direction is because I did it just recently to test, and it's so much easier to do. So, and that's the reason why I jumped onto it. But and that's the thing about the reason why I would never tell anyone to just be one thing is because, is for at least advice wise, is because, like, there are so many ways that filming a shot is so much easier than generating a shot. Because I've had, I think any of us who've been on set, when you get that one take hit where you don't even know if you need another one, where you're just like, you fucking Clint Eastwood that shit, where you're like, oh, one take, it works, it looks good, let's go, moving on. When you get that time on set, it's fucking exhilarating. It's so exhilarating. It's just, there's almost no better word for it, because it's that moment where how the audience is going to feel, or at least you feel how the audience is going to feel, because you saw that performance, you saw the take was good. If you're using film, you make sure the gate is clear. If you're using digital, you make sure the shot was captured and, you were able to close recording and it didn't fuck it up. Like, if all of that worked in that one shot, oh my God. And it's the same thing when AI pays out. When AI gives me exactly what I ask it for, gives me the shot I want, and the prompting is right, the thing looks good. Like, there's a bit of it's a very small amount of that exhilaration, but when it works on set, it's great. Which is why video to video works in my eyes is going to work for me, because around where I'm at, there's a lot of very light art situation. So there's some very light actors and stuff like that. And I'm going to run through probably enough leading. If I made everybody who's here a leading person, I could probably make about 5 movies before I'd get to, like, there's not many leading people around here anymore. But then, there's still the world. Like, that's only within Binghamton. If I go outside of Binghamton, go to Rochester, I go to Syracuse, that grows even more. Those are only an hour or 2 hours away. And this is the thing about choosing your medium is, the resource part of it. The reason why I would tell people to look at resource filmmaking is look at who you have around you. Look at what you have around you. Like, you could have a set piece that's totally to you have total access to. You may not even know it. Like, I didn't realize that somebody that my wife knew works at a bar that was just like, they don't care what they do on Saturday nights. They just need enough for the till. And when I asked how much that was, it wasn't a number that was outside of my budget. So I was like, so if I just get 2 people in here and I just sit them in this, like, absolutely unused part of the bar, I just need to make sure we buy enough, buy, quote unquote, enough drinks to sit us there. And I could do whatever I want as far as just keep it tight, keep it contained and not affect anybody. They're like, yeah, absolutely. And you may have that. And you could tell a lot of stories with, like, one location. Because there's the outside location, the inside, you could change around a location. As far as what we were just talking about is buying stuff. You just look on eBay. If there's a piece of furniture that kind of speaks to you as far as, what you could use. Like, I made an entire short based on a briefcase because it was just such a weird looking briefcase that I was like, well, I'm going to make this short. It's called Hard Case. It's about these two guys. The briefcase is the MacGuffin. It's everything that's in the midst of it, but it has no bearing on the story. It just looks really weird. And, you know, I had a location. I had 2 actors. We filmed it. I still have to, I never will ever finish it, but it's the idea of what that could do for you as a filmmaker. So yeah, video to video is on my horizon, but I will say it's now, since Juan 2.2 Animate, which was only I think 2-3 months ago, it wasn't really as much possibility as it is now. Because now, like I was saying, like I don't even have to bust out the T2i. I could do this on my phone and get some really good shots to then take into video to video and do something else with. And, you know, animation is a great regular animation, like Ralph Bakshi, line art animation is a really, really, really easy entry point for a lot of people to understand what's going on, suspend their own reality, and allow for you to tell them a story. So with video to video, that's very easy. Well, not very easy. It's easier than what it was. And that's why having the production conversations, there's always strong, because then gets to the distribution. And that's like also another big hump in this. And that's like one of it almost is where many projects die. A lot of projects die in 2 places, in my opinion. And anyone who's here, correct me if they've seen it a different way or have a different way that they've seen it. In development, where it's soon to be made, somebody's got promises and they're not being fulfilled. It's being refined to the point of obscurity. And in distribution, because if you've made the thing and you're waiting for, you know, whatever that is to work out for you to get to the next point, like those 2 periods are where I've seen 98% of the films I've been a part of die. It's because, and it's always because of like, and this is why doing it yourself, even if you lose any quality that you're really looking for, it's much more worth it to get your story out there than it is to wait for that. But yeah, distribution is the next component that I was, and it's really hard to compartmentalize that idea into something we can talk about, but it also is one of the most important parts of your journey, because it's where everything gets to be seen. Go ahead, Michael.
I feel like it's probably best at this stage of the series to leave that very, I don't know, topical, theoretical. I think the big kind of silos you want to think about is, do you want social capital as a return, or do you want, you know, monetization, legit money? You know, you could probably balance some level of both of those. I did that with The Fall of Tartaria, I think, early on. Luckily, you know, for whatever reason, the algorithm on YouTube liked that, and it became my most watched video. I have since removed that, made it private on YouTube, because I had a sense that it was kind of broadly capitalizing on the network effect of Google in terms of search and things like that. So I pulled it down with the idea that would help some of the other projects that forked into, in terms of the audiobook, the ebook, and getting distribution on Amazon Prime for the short. You know, that has stayed consistent and steady. More so than that period when I was kind of looking at like, why am I getting diminished results here on the monetization side? That's not to say that, you know, I might not put that up again on YouTube at some point, but for now, you know, the real value there is to be able to, for me as a creative, to be able to capitalize on the work that I did, you know, and to add to the catalog of material that I have out there, whether that's film or audio or books. And, you know, I think in terms of building the capacity for people to find us, you really want to hit that critical mass side of things. I am not there on the video side. YouTube, as a result of, everything that's gone on, I have completely deprioritized YouTube because I think that it's fundamentally extractive, and I missed being able to monetize my channel by 30 hours over the course of a year. And I was slamming, I was working, I was really trying to hit the threshold for that, and I missed it. So I don't know if I will ever get back to that stage of things where I'll be on the cusp, where it looks like I'll be able to monetize that channel. And, truthfully, now I just don't even care about YouTube. I send my podcast there, and I send promo stuff there for books. And again, it is a distribution platform. It is a community platform. Do I do enough there? No, I never have, truthfully. I don't engage with YouTube as a user in a regular or significant way. I also am not making good attempts at developing community on YouTube. I never have. I just don't really like it, and I'm amongst the first people to get exposure to the platform, when it was literally, an infant in the space, not even bought by Google yet. I think a lot of us are in that same category. It's just where we looked at this stuff and I didn't really know what to do with it. I was a musician at the time. To me, it was like, oh, cool. If we film some stuff, we can toss it up there, whatever. It had not, at that phase of things, really occurred to me that, well, that I was going to ever make movies. It was always just like a total additional thing that we did for bands, or we did television shows and stuff like that in the past, but it was always something that it was adjacent to that and just seemed like so much heavy lifting that it was never on my roadmap. Really, I don't even know if it is now. It's something that I like doing and will continue to do, but I don't know if I'm a director or a filmmaker, I guess, is maybe the best way I would put it. And that I'm going to keep making these things, but in the sense that I'm going to pursue the highest levels of the industry in the traditional sense or circles. I don't know if that is, something that I want to chase after. It's a lot of work. And also then I have to drop the other things that I like doing. But I do want to go back to the idea that, make that decision out of the gate. Are you trying to get social capital? Or are you trying to monetize this stuff? And hey, maybe you have the right platforms and audiences for that in different ecosystems or across the board, where it is able to really amplify, what you're doing. Again, like the Chicago 1893 project has been fantastic for me, in the sense that a lot of people know about that project, and by extension, they perhaps have some awareness of me. That's not the critical component of that for me, but also, the Fall of Tartaria project, again, there is an audience, and maybe there's some overlap between those two audiences, wink, nod, but being able to find that kind of stuff and put it out there, be interested and compelled, and find audiences or find mechanisms that make the work worthwhile in a long tail sense monetarily, is really on my mind regularly for any of the projects that I'm doing. And I think that it's important to consider that out of the gate. If you are doing the social side of things, then I think you're going to be in a hurdle race. If you are going the monetization thing, I think that you're going to be looking for tent posts broadly to be able to kind of get your tent up and to be able to regularly draw audiences into the tent to give them a show.
Absolutely. I'm glad not to go into distribution. It's a whole conversation, because distribution has an entire ethos, mythos, everything thos. There's lots of thoses. But I think what's important about what you just said is also about developing your project. the thing that I thought was kind of cool was watching your experience with Tartaria, because and this is something that you could also include into making your own projects. It's just like what me and She Crypto were talking about. The crypto film arena has massively shrunk. I mean, I don't want to say it's dead because I'm not dead yet. So until I'm dead, I know at least I'm doing it. But the whole thing about that is accessing those audiences and the why. It's something about what we were talking about earlier about doing your own research and making something that you want to make and how you want to make it. There's also the aspects of whatever interests you, whatever communities you're involved in, whatever the things are that enable you to make more stories. Like, I had always shot a lot of the music videos that I shot that the artist didn't have a location or anything. I would always, because I work there, I would always put Coney Island as an idea on the list, because I knew how to shoot Coney Island. I knew, especially the time of year, I would know how many people are going to be around, what the boardwalk was going to look like, if we were going to be up against if we were on the beach, how awesome it looks when the entire, when all of the amusement parks are lit up behind somebody. Or even conversely, I used it as a fill light, flip the camera around and be looking towards the surf. The light that would come from the amusement parks would be so strong that it would light the entire artist up. If I had a solo shot, if I had a group shot, it would get a little more complicated. But this is the thing. I used to use Coney Island all the time because I knew and I did the research at the time when I was making a documentary on Coney, was like that there's an installed audience for that term, Coney Island. Whether it's people who understand it as one way, understand it as another way, understand it as the current way, people who live there, people who've been through there, that beach gets 1 million visitors a year. So it's one of those things, like there's 1 million people a year who have interacted with this area, have some sort of memory from it, have something visceral that they could attach to it. Most of the stuff I make is very New York oriented because of that. So if you look at something you're making, like when you find, like I was actually, I was on my reels today and somebody was talking about how the only films that really are going to be strongly, not just greenlit, but also attended by the fans is horror, because horror time after time after time pays back. And they use the example of this past year, both Margot Robbie and Keanu Reeves had their own like diversions from major IP. I think Keanu Reeves was an angel. Margot Robbie, I don't know if they were referring to Wuthering Heights, because I don't even think that's out yet. But I don't know what the fuck that's going to happen with that movie, because I hated that book. But Jesus, like Margot Robbie and Keanu Reeves had 2 off major IP films in the past year. Both didn't do very well in theaters. Black Phone 2, which is not just a horror, but it's a horror sequel. And Ethan Hawke, as much as he's like, he's a, I don't know what ABC, I don't know what part of actor he is. He's a great actor. I absolutely love Ethan Hawke. He's playing the villain in this, which is not his traditional kind of position. And that film, I don't know if it was triple or quadruple, but it many times over got its budget. Sinners, which is outside of Coogler's usual kind of array of things he does, it blew the fucking doors off of the box office, from an $80 million film to over $400 million taken in just in theaters. Like, that's an insane deal. And it's horror. Horror has that ability to kind of pay back in that way. I think sci-fi in its own way does. I also feel like if you have any communities that you are part of, that where the people are, and you can make your story kind of oriented towards how those people are either feeling, seeing, experiencing, whatever, I think that's a major part of development for your story, because no matter what your timing is, how much time you want the piece to be, no matter what you're using, if what you put in front of the camera really has an already installed audience, like it's something that if you can access it, it pays back. And it not only pays back monetarily, not always, but many times, it also pays back by giving into that community. Like I watched, Jason Momoa, where he's the king of Hawaii, well, the Hawaiian Islands at the time. And like I've watched this show and I've continued to watch it, where as much as I'm like, I've been to Hawaii a number of times, and I know, and I was with somebody who is also from Hawaii, like their family is the lineage all the way back to before the annexation by the United States. And I always find it interesting about the stories. I remember like we used to talk about the history of the place and everything, like coming out in this in the show. It's really like, I'm not part of that community, but I heard about this and it's really cool to watch it happen. So if there are things that you are attached to in some way, shape, or form, especially if you're in that community, you're from that community, you're part of that community, like make a story from it. Find a story that works for you, works for what you do, and just, make a story from it and find where that audience is watching stuff. Like I was saying before with the microdramas. Microdramas is all about where somebody is watching. You have all these platforms and stuff that you can find people that are watching these things and, see what kind of metrics you can get from that. But it's massively important to try and figure out where that audience is. That audience might be on YouTube. Like Michael was saying, he hasn't built the community around it in YouTube, but the community is definitely there. It's just a matter of how you access it and when you access it and how faithful you are to that community. Because once again, like Tataria, like me and him spoke about this. And of course, Big Brother being what it is on all cell phones and devices, heard what I was talking about, and nonstop for about, I think even till today, I have all of these different things seep into my feeds and seep into my algos about alternate histories, hidden civilizations, stuff like that, and flat earth and all this other stuff. Like everything starts coming into my feed and trickles. As I engage with it, it goes from a trickle to a drip. It goes from a drip to a full-on pour, because it is interesting how not only algo, but people feed into that. And the algo institutes what it does from what people feed into. So, that's the thing about when you're making this film or whatever piece you have, it's trying to access that. In our sense, like Project Astral, it's about dreams. It's all the gorillas who were involved with it. It was all about like, what did you dream? Did you ever have a dream that came to reality? How did it affect reality? And there are lots of people who have dreams that affect reality. There are people like myself who, there are times where I get deja vu from dreams that I've had many months earlier. And they're about mundane situations. I had one yesterday where I was like, I've seen this exact situation in a dream. And I remembered it to the T. And I looked around and I was like, okay, that means something. And I applied my own meaning to it. But, dreams are something that's pretty universal. Whether you don't have them and you understand what they are and you always are like either interested or dismayed by the idea, or you have dreams, a lot of dreams, a little bit of dreams, or one dream in particular. Big, it's a big niche because billions of people, lots of people have dreams. It's like, it's there. But, anything. I used to work, when I worked on sets, I worked for an Indian company, and they had come from Bollywood over to the US, and they wanted to kind of bring their like absolutely rigorous schedule of making more and more and more content, but they wanted to bring it to the US and do more US based kind of storytelling with this kind of rigorous schedule and some of these themes and stuff like that. And that community for that director came out time after time after time because he accessed that community on a legitimate level. And that's the big thing about it is like he knew, he wasn't too fond of it. Like he wanted to go towards the bigger festivals, but one of the things being involved in his production all the way to being his DOP for a point in time was like, well, if we go to the South Pacific Film Festival, you will win because this film is better than most of the stuff me and you have watched at the South Pacific Film Festival. But it's something that, he wanted to go towards Tribeca. And then we went, we tried. and they didn't accept us. But once again, when we went to the people that he was like earnestly accessing, it always hit. It always resonated. It always worked for them. And that's kind of the key to it, is like, you know, parts of making a story is also the why. You know, if you've just never seen this film before from anyone else, if you have something you want to say that you haven't seen anyone else say, you know, and that's the thing, Ryan Coogler, like no one else has made that era, that subject matter film with vampires in it, or if they have, it hasn't been that many. So it was two components that do work in their own sense. But then you take those two components, you put them together, you've now hybridized an idea to a point where somebody's like, well, fuck, I don't even know which way to go with this, but I want to watch both of these ideas, you know, in one go. You know, it's the same way like Twilight, you know, whatever they call it, YVA or whatever, the young person coming of age type of story, the romance and the little bit of horror from the vampires all kind of combined into one, yielded its own thing. Interview with the Vampire is a very different sort of that, you know, and then there are other stories. The story of Dracula in general is kind of this whole thing as well. But production and what you make these stories, let it influence you. You know, I'd say one of the big things is for me is stay loosely guarded on your material. Like have it be the way you want it to be, but allow for inspiration to come from anywhere. Because one of the great things about working on sets with people is sometimes the best ideas come from the people who have the least amount of investment into the ultimate goal. Like I've seen a grip come up with an idea for a camera move that was fucking genius, and he planned it out, panned it, and showed us everything. And it was like he had seen it on a set before, but he hadn't seen anyone else do it. We did it, and the shot came out great. Like we didn't win any, you know, I've never won an award for any of the shots we've made. I wish I could have, but it's one of those things that I felt like if that ever made it to an award show, that shot would have gotten us something. Because that's the thing about this, is that don't do it for awards. Don't do it for, you know, for anything but the love of the game, you know, because making stories and getting people to love what you make. And it's the same thing like being a chef. Like if you enjoy watching somebody eat your food, like the same thing about filmmaking. If you enjoy watching somebody enjoy your work, like a legitimate laugh, a legitimate, like guttural, like real deep laugh is so hard. And it's worth it when it happens. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we are wrapping up the syllabus for the workshop. I think we've probably covered that territory as completely as we can. For the folks hanging out on stage, are there any thoughts or comments, things we need to know about from you guys that are coming out or that we should be looking forward to, or anything along those lines?
I like to stay quiet.
All right. Well,
so I won't say much, but yeah, you know, it's always going with me. And I also wanted to just bring up a point about streaming 2.0. So I don't know if you guys want to take the, you know, plank with that at some time, but I do feel like that's going to be a thing. I don't know if that's going to be the general term or colloquialism,
what
but
does streaming 2.0 mean to you?
I think what it means is that with all the merging, everything that's happening with the merging of like Netflix and, you know, whoever or whatever's going to happen there, that, you know, invariably there's going to be some kind of, you know, price hike or something. And we know like generation like Alpha Z or whatever, they're not going to be paying like, you know, like your grandparents would pay for like, I don't know, Spectrum or Comcast, where it's like $200-$300 or something. So I think now what people are doing, like I've actually done research, and there's like, there's got to be like 10 like streaming services or stuff that people are trying to do in the space now.
Yeah.
I did put like I have like a feed, but it's probably far back, probably at the end of last year, where I kind of went on this whole thing.
Are you in our Discord?
No.
Join there's a link above, and post that information into one of the channels so that we can all look at it.
Oh yeah, I'll do that. And so you guys have a Discord for this?
Yeah, it's up above in the nest. You can find the link there. It's open.
All right, cool. So maybe one day, and I'll do that, and maybe you guys can talk about it. But it's a thing, and I think that's going to be something, and that's why I'm really invested in the space, because
Very
I feel like for people like me who can make films and make films on their own, I feel like it'll be probably less gate kept at first. You know how that goes. So yeah.
With that, we brought PJ up. Maybe PJ has some thoughts he'd like to share as we maybe get close to the finish line for today.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much. I wanted to just say to She Crypto, I love the Bad Kid. That is awesome. I love my Bad Kid. I have all, I think 8 WTF mouths, which is awesome. So anyways, yeah, great conversation like always. And Chris, thank you for sharing all that information. I would love to hear more though, Michael, about what you guys are, you mentioned that your syllabus is wrapping up. If there's things I can do to help promote that, I mean, that education and getting people involved and knowing what's available, that's something I'm trying to push on all of my platforms. And I would love to support what you guys are doing and keeping that educational front facing, if that makes sense.
For sure. So this workshop will be a monthly series. This is the first one we've done. Again, to reiterate from the beginning of the program, this is kind of a fork of the workshops that I was doing on the writer's block through last year with that crew, but tailored to this scene topically. So this session has been recorded. I will be putting it up on all the podcast platforms. Of course, everybody's welcome to go back and listen to it there or help spread the word, get some listeners, get some ears onto that side of things. For you, PJ, specifically, relevant here, we have shipped all of the phase 2 airdrops of the Project Astral NFT series, except yours, PJ, because I don't have your new wallet address and I don't want to send it to the old wallet. So as I said, maybe a couple of weeks ago, get in contact with us so that we can ship that out to you and make sure that it's not in a compromised wallet, whatever you're using now, just to do some quick coverage. Cause I think that we're more or less in the home stretch on things. I got a
Michael,
bunch.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Dude, I appreciate you so much. Yeah, absolutely. You and Chris are fantastic. I will get that to you. I do remember us having that conversation. It slipped my mind, so I'll be sure to get that done.
All good. Yeah. We want you to be made whole on that,
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. It's always amazing.
Yeah, handful. Oh, go ahead, PJ. Go ahead.
No. It's good. I appreciate it. I will get to that. Things are just moving so fast in 1,000 directions, and it's easy to forget. So I apologize that.
Yeah, we're here. Up above in the nest, like I said, there's a handful of projects going on, big stuff. Writer's block next week. Heidi and I are trading off hosting that now. I have shut down my Wednesday spaces. You won't see that anymore. We are now only doing the Tuesday spaces. I will be hosting the Tuesdays on the 2nd and 4th week of the month. Look for that. We also have a huge announcement, a big project we're going to announce on Tuesday. It's going to be really cool. It's with the Based book sale. If you pay attention to that. Also, it's been 1 year since I put out Investigating the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which started its life as a video series made with our own Chrissy Pressman. If you saw those, then I thank you. If you haven't, they are up on YouTube, or the ebook is out there. The audio book is out there. All that stuff is available on various platforms. We do appreciate your support in these projects that we make. That's why we make them. Also, interview this week on the podcast had the crew from Raconteur Press on, the owner, the illustrator, and one of the senior editors, talking about what they're doing. And it is very compelling. I think that publishing went through the sort of infrastructural issues that film is kind of going through recently. And I think that, it consolidated a lot, but that change creates opportunity, and we find these opportunities if we're persistent. And Raconteur, I think, is kind of in that vein of things. Exploring Our National Parks Volume 3. Chris has seen a couple of rough cuts. I am trying to get this thing across the finish line. I would love to say it'll be done by the end of the month. I am pushing as hard as I can. It's close, but gosh, it needs a lot of work. Writing music, rewriting script, making edits, all kinds of stuff just ripping over there. Let's see what else we got. Also, the Project Astral NFT series. We're going to be making some announcements on that. Phase 3 is going to go live on February 1st, I think. So we've been working on assets. We're going to be doing a massive promotional push around that. We will be airdropping to standard edition holders from Phase 2. We will be airdropping to special edition holders from Phase 2. So you get right into Phase 3. We're going to be looking to do the full gamut of promotion around that and get people interested and excited about this project as we try to get it across the finish line. All kinds of stuff just coming to fruition finally. I know I was bogged down on audiobooks last year, but this year it's a different story. This year's about film. This year is about video for me, and broadly, of course, with this space as well. Again, join our Discord if you're not in there. It's up above in the nest from the AI Film Gorillas. It's free, no charge. You're welcome to join and hang out, share your work, talk tools, ask questions, whatever you like. Finally, I am putting out chapter by chapter 1 a month from the How to Create a Personal Brand in 10 Steps workbook. That will be coming out on my Substack. I will be putting the videos up there as well for paying subscribers. This is a premium feature. This stuff is this is premium content, and I want you to have it, but I also want you to compensate me for it. I've been doing this work. This is one of my bigger projects, actually, in terms of people getting the book, using the audiobook. All this stuff's been around for years, but we're going to keep hammering on this. I want you to try to appreciate it as well. Yes, we are closing it up. I had to go through all that stuff. I haven't done a full rundown of the nest in a while, and I wanted to make this one good. Back to you, Chris.
Gotcha. So we, the Film3, want you to have a really kick-ass Thursday and have a great weekend. Really think about, if anyone's just listening at the end and you really want to make something of a story you have, listen back, take some notes, run it through AI, take some notes from that, see if there's anything that really gives you the feels to do some things. But yeah, it's one of those things that I will say, doing this series of workshops, it gets back to a lot of the reasons why I started making movies. And it's the reason why I think that information, no matter what, is worthwhile. Because whether you're making it with AI, whether you're making it with emulsion film, whether you're making it with digital film, we've gone over all the cost per minute on all these different things. It's, making stories is kind of one of the main pillars of humanity. We've been telling stories since there were other ways of telling it beyond just us talking. And even before we were talking, we were telling it with pictures and trying to express this thing it is to be human in this world, and what it is that we can put out to the world to make others feel human. It's a beautiful thing about this. So I really want to thank everyone for coming in today, and thank everyone who's listening to the recording. You can find us on any of the stuff Michael has talked about. And we'll be back in a month. We'll be announcing whatever the next workshop is. We have some ideas, and we're just rounding out whatever the ideas are for workshop to workshop, especially seeing how these things go and where we get to. I'm very glad we didn't get deeper into the distribution, because that's a whole workshop. That's its own fucking thing. So much love to everyone, and have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.